Manipulation is a word that's used a lot to describe borderline personality disorder. People call it manipulation, and I called it self-preservation because I wasn't doing these things sort of like premeditated. I didn't sit down and like write it out for a week that, hey, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to make this person love me, or whatever. It was very in the moment, sporadic. Now, sure, the receiving end of that definitely probably felt duped, manipulated, things like that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free, safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Redabaum, suicide attempt survivor and recovering substance abuser. Welcome to another great episode. This week I'm speaking with Kelly South, and she is an author of a book called Pay Attention to Me, and it's all about her adventures with borderline personality disorder, or BPD. We discuss what it's like to go through treatment, be diagnosed later in life with it, and how to have a successful relationship, or at least how she had a successful relationship while being diagnosed and suffering from borderline personality disorder. Before I do that, I'd just like to thank everyone for all the wonderful messages and things you send, and for all the new listeners. And for people like Evan Bray, who has a radio talk show, and he invited me on there. I did that this week. And Lisa Peters, who has a television show, Lisa Peters Live, talked to her this last week. That's nice, going out there and being on media and speaking with media folk. There's a couple new things with the podcast too. There's a Buy Me a Coffee, which is at buymeacoffee.com, and you can look up Bunny Hugs. So if you feel so inclined to buy me a coffee, I would very, very much appreciate that. I also have a merch store finally. So if you would like coffee mugs, stickers, t-shirts, hoodies, all that kind of stuff, go to TeePublic. That's TeePublic.com. Look up Bunny Hugs Media. There's I think 30 different designs there. They put on a whole bunch of different products, and I like designing this kind of stuff, so there's going to be a whole bunch more designs always being added, so go there and check that out. And don't forget to listen on Thursdays with Nick Thompson and I for the Mental Health Headline Hot Takes. That's every Thursday. And this will also be on YouTube, Bunny Hugs Mental Health on YouTube. So if you'd rather watch this interview than listen, you can go there and do that. But anyway, back to this episode and Kelly South and her borderline personality disorder. So without further ado, I give you Kelly. For those of you who don't know what borderline personality disorder is, can you maybe kind of break it down how you understand it?
Sure. So for me, it was broken down as it's a cluster B personality disorder. There's a couple of narcissistic disorder, histrionic disorder, but I was diagnosed with borderline, which is, to sum it up, a difficulty, the ability to regulate your emotions in times of distress or abandonment. So a lot of people with borderline personality disorder will have dysregulation of emotions up and down. It's often confused with bipolar because it kind of looks the same as in like super highs and super lows, but borderline can be like a daily thing. Bipolar can sometimes last weeks or months, and the highs and the lows. My emotions or my mood would fluctuate once a day to 15 times a day. And it usually accompanies with, things like addictions or eating disorders are kind of like cohabiting with that. Poor self-view, not understanding, self-image, addictions, sorry, I can't talk today. Impulsivity, my favorite. That was the one I was really great at. And so, yeah, and most of the things present themselves in moments of like distress. But also, like, if you're in a really great mood, then everything is heightened. The love you give is heightened. The gifts you give is heightened. So it's just really basically inability to regulate emotions one way or the other.
Yeah, that does sound similar to bipolar in the way that, well, other than like how quickly the moods change. But when you are manic or whatever it is, you can be very impulsive. You can, you're very lovely. You're very, all these things. And so, yeah, there's a lot of crossover. So how does one get diagnosed? Like, I know for most personality disorders, there's like a checklist, and it's like, if you have 7 out of the 12, then you're just like, yep, that's you.
Right. And that's basically how it was. You have to meet a certain amount of the criteria to meet it. And then also, if you then don't check those marks, then you don't meet it anymore. So for myself, I met all of them.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. I'm an overachiever like that, right? I'm like, if I'm going to go big. I'm going to meet all of them. And then after my intense therapy process over several years, I no longer meet criteria for borderline personality disorder. There are things that I know, right? Bummer.
Oh, wait, no, I have those mixed up. No, congratulations.
Thank you again. Double congratulations. I do still struggle with a little bit of like self-view. So that's one of the things. But the other things I've been able to manage. So I guess people call it remission because I have to work really hard every day not to, revert to my old coping mechanisms. But technically speaking, I no longer meet criteria, but I struggled with it for a long time.
Right. So things like self-view, though, that could be everybody has trouble with that at times.
Yeah.
But you could also have trauma or anxiety or whatever, which causes that. Because usually personality disorders also come with some kind of traumatic things in the past. Is that accurate for your diagnosis as well?
Yes, it was. It's funny because, not funny. I guess it could be funny or not funny. It depends on how you look at it. I tend to giggle a lot when I tell my story because I've already processed and lived it. So I can find the silver lining in it.
That's me too, as well. I'm telling like this horrible dark story and I'm laughing my ass off. People like, this guy is still nuts. But
right.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's totally fine. So I thought for a really long time that my trauma wasn't really, big enough. Right. I was like, well, there are people that, were chained in their basements or, all of these things. And I kept downplaying mine. When I was younger, my parents divorced and my dad, took me away from my mom while she was out of the state. And she was gone for an emergency. So it wasn't anything that she did, but he kind of moved me and him away when I was very young, and I started this new school, and my dad, super cool guy, sort of kept feeding me his narrative, to look like the hero, right? Your mom doesn't love you, all of these things, because it was a bitter, it wasn't a great divorce. Not many are. So my mom came back and finally found us, but at that time I'd already been kind of groomed to like not want to be with this person. But so the cops came and they took, grabbed me from my school, and I'm kicking and screaming because, she had custody or the law. I don't remember like all those details. And then I remember feeling abandonment and also like having no control at the same time. And I think that's where it first started for me. And then later on in life, there was a sexual abuse from a friend. That's how I ended up losing my virginity. So lots of stuff from the past to process.
I was just talking to someone a couple days ago, and that's how they lost their virginity as well. Yeah. And I said in that episode, and I'll say it again, I know so many women, especially around my age, between 35, 45, 50, who that's how they lost their virginity, was sexual assault at a party, or they were drinking, or it was a friend,
Well, and the interesting about processing that sort of memory, because I did a lot of what's called EMDR, which is like a kind of regression therapy.
I just did some.
Yeah.
I just did some. Yeah.
And it was, I always found like this thing like, oh, it was because of what I was wearing or the vibe that I was putting off, that's why that happened, instead of really like coming to acceptance that like, it doesn't matter. Like that's just not something that someone has to deal with. So there was that trauma that occurred in my life that I believe, and my therapist believes, that contributed to developing borderline personality disorder. And basically that's just a list of poor coping mechanisms, right? When I'm in distress, I'm spending money, or I'm, promiscuous or whatever, but I'm actually a super functioning person otherwise. So that is kind of what developed. And I wasn't diagnosed till I'm 42 now. But I was diagnosed at 35, but I exhibited all the traits really early on. Love bombing and, changing my look. Like if I had a friend that was super into goth, like next day I'm like wearing black lipstick and I'm super goth, just kind of conforming. But they don't specifically diagnose adolescents with borderline personality disorder. Usually that's not every case because of hormones and puberty and like, oh, she's just being dramatic because, that's what 14-year-old little girls do. And so they try to wait till you're older, which I wish I would have gotten the help earlier on because it's a whole hell of a lot easier to break patterns if you've only been using them for 5 years versus 25 years.
Right. Yeah. Poop. I forgot my question. Oh, how much of it do you think is nature versus nurture? So, other people have trauma, but they don't end up with borderline personality disorder. So in their brain or their DNA or something, it must be like, when the trauma happens or the type of trauma. You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, totally know what you're asking.
Okay.
So specifically, and I believe in, I don't have like my reference or my citations, but I do believe that if a person that's diagnosed with borderline personality disorder has a family member, you're like 80% likely to develop it or something, because I believe that it is more of a nurture situation. Now, whether that was that you went through all this trauma and you didn't have the support or you didn't tell anybody and you internalized those things, I don't necessarily know if it's like a gene mutation or anything like that. I will say that me personally, I grew up in a high stress level environment. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom, struggled with her emotions. And so a lot of stuff that I used, I learned just by seeing. So me personally, I believe it's more environmental, but I'm sure there's studies that say, it could be both, or it's a gene and, you have a mutation.
Right. Maybe not a gene, but it's like you are more susceptible because,
Yeah, your brain
like
and your amygdala or something. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Whatever. And so I've said this before too, but I honestly think, so I'm in recovery of addiction. And I almost think that substance abuse disorder could almost be a cluster B personality disorder as well, just because like cluster B personality disorders, they get kind of a bad rap because you can be manipulative and you can be all this stuff to other people and you're affecting everyone around you and you can't be trusted and all this stuff. And anytime I think of back when I was in the middle of my addictions, it was like I was the same way. But you can also get it treated, and as long as you stay on top of it, you're still a good person. You're still all these things. You're not late. You don't have that diagnosis necessarily anymore. Anyway, that's not a question. That's just how I feel about addiction. Is it could be a cluster B thing.
Yeah, and manipulation is a word that's used a lot to describe borderline personality disorder. I did kind of address that when I was writing my book. I wanted to make it clear to people that people call it manipulation and I called it self-preservation, because I wasn't doing these things sort of like premeditated. I didn't sit down and like write it out for a week that, hey, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to make this person love me, or whatever. It was very in the moment, sporadic. Now, sure, the receiving end of that definitely probably felt duped, manipulated, things like that. But I never went into it. This was all like survival for me. How do I survive this attack, this feeling, this emotional roller coaster? And addictions are different for everybody. Sex addicts, promiscuity, spending, gambling, drinking, drugs, eating disorders. It's all, this big
Exercise.
illusion. Yeah. It's all this big illusion of self-control or of some sort of control. And it's really not. Like, I do the things because I'm like, this makes me feel like I'm in control. I had no control over none of it.
I know, that's one of the first things I learned in treatment was like, just stop trying to control everything, because look where it ended. You're in treatment, for God's sakes.
Right?
Just go with the flow. Maybe try that.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's not like you make a conscious decision to manipulate, quote unquote, manipulate. Like I said, it's just it's a coping mechanism. It's a survival thing. It's a defense mechanism. It's all these things. And so you're not conscious of it. So once you start going to treatment and you get the diagnosis and stuff, do you become more self-aware then that like, oh, I'm doing this, or do you not have to become self-aware because you just stop that behavior because of the treatment?
So for me, borderline personality disorder, it was such a mind fuck. Can I say mind fuck?
You can say mind fuck.
Okay.
You can say fuck mind.
Because I knew exactly what I was doing when I was doing it. It wasn't like this blackout thing. And I knew it was wrong. There were parts of my brain where like, this is wrong. And I could not stop even though I knew it was wrong. It wasn't the sense of, I know it's wrong and I don't care if I hurt somebody. It was like, I physically couldn't stop even knowing said thing was wrong. And so I was already self-aware. And I think a lot of people with a borderline personality are, because then when we sit back, when we're out of the eye of the storm, we're like, whoa, that was not okay, or that actually happened. So self-awareness helped me zero in the recovery process. And the recovery process was absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because it basically, for me, I did a lot of EMDR and DBT, which is just learning to have these tools, was take what inherently came naturally to me and don't. Like, that was treatment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like telling someone you have a headache and they're like, just sit through the headache. Don't take that ibuprofen. Don't take that Tylenol. And you're like, what? That doesn't make sense. I'll just grab the ibuprofen and everything will be better. So you had to sit through the storm and wait it out and not reach for it. And I was in therapy for over 3 years, like therapy twice a week. Before I was able to sit long enough and feel all of it and then go, yeah, I'm not going to go down the street and lose my shit. It ain't even worth it. But it was a long process, and I quit and came back and failed. And I'm like, this should be easier by now. And my therapist would always say, hey, you've done this for 25 years. It's not going to come naturally in 3 years. So
Right.
yeah, no, self-awareness was not, I already knew, but I couldn't not do the things that I was doing, which was super frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate quite a bit, because it does sound a lot like addiction. It's like the first 3 years like of recovering of anything can be super difficult, especially if you're mid-30s when you're trying to deal with it. And that's why there's AA meetings like every day. You can go several times a day. It's like this constant maintenance of this stuff. And if you stop your treatment, then you're at very high risk of relapsing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you call that a relapse? Like, would it be considered a relapse, I guess, if you started
considered
behaviors again?
I considered it, because I mean, there were times where I would go a few months without having sort of an episode or anything, and then I would fall off the wagon, so to speak. My therapist also was very clear, like, it's not how many times you fall, it's how long you stay there. So I would have moments where I would fall off, and before therapy, I'd be like, well, I'm already down here, might as well keep digging, who gives a shit? Where with the therapy and the tools, I could fall off, and then the next day be like, I'm not going to continue to dig. Yesterday was yesterday. Today's today. It's a new day. So I do consider it a relapse. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right. But is that the language you use? Like relapse? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I had a relapse. I told that to my husband the other day. I was like, it wasn't like a relapse, but I mean, for me it is, because I used to have like a very bad addiction with like overspending. And I had this really magnificent moment with a family member that just stressed me the hell out. And I went and I spent like, $60 or something on something that I didn't need. And I'm like, I did it. I've spent the money I didn't have. And he's like, you're okay. So yeah, I said, I had a relapse. I said, I spent money I didn't have. So I use the term relapse. I don't know if people in the industry necessarily do.
The industry of BPD
or psychologists.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
This really exclusive group that's not exclusive because like millions of people struggle with it. Yeah, that group.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about the treatment, and it's like, so anything you used to do, just don't do. It's like, it reminds me of Seinfeld. I don't know if you watch Seinfeld, but the one where George is like, I'm just going to do the opposite of everything. And he ends up getting a good job and a girlfriend and all that stuff.
Yeah, it really is. It was like, hey, you can just send a text that says good morning, right? You don't have to send a text, or you can receive a text that said talk to you later, and you don't have to be like, well, when later and what time and when should I be, like these very intense things. And
Are you
I was
mad
like,
at me?
yeah.
Are you mad at me?
What'd I do?
Are you mad?
That's so funny, because I was talking to my husband about how back in the day when I was in the middle of borderline personality, we would have an entire argument and he wasn't even home.
Right.
So here's how that goes. Okay. So I'll call.
So it's just in your head?
Pretty much. I text him and
Right.
and he's at work, and I've seen him go, like, logically, I know he's at work, and I text him and he doesn't text me back. Now, there are a million reasons. He's in a meeting. He can't pick up his phone. And again, I'm self-aware that, like, that's possible. But what's really possible is there's the new secretary and she's super hot and she's flirting with him and he's taking her out to lunch. And so I'm having this whole narrative in my head that when he gets home, I'm treating him as if that had occurred. And he's like, yo, I just got home. How did we just have an entire fight? And I wasn't even in the house. And it's because of, that narrative, this self, like, oh my gosh, or, oh, he's going to leave me. Or maybe he's already left me because he's not texting back, and he usually does. And so, it was a lot of stuff was perceived reality versus reality. Now, don't get, like, sometimes when reality, that was actually the reality. I've been left before, right? I've been dumped. But even in a stable environment where you feel safe or the other person feels safe, you never feel safe. And there's always this narrative in the back of your head that's like, when is the shoe going to drop? Yeah.
Yeah. You're always on guard.
Mm-hmm.
So was there an event or what happened that switched everything and got you on your healing journey and figure out maybe it's me?
Yeah. This is so weird. It's so weird.
Weird's good.
No, so I had a moment in my life that it was just, so I had, prior to 2017, attempted to end my life 4 times. That is one very common aspect of borderline personality, is suicidal ideation. So in 2017, I went, I don't want to be here anymore. It's not that I didn't want to be here. I just didn't want to live the life I was living, and I couldn't stop the things in my head. And I'm like, well, the only way to stop the things in my head is just not to be here, right? Because it didn't matter the house, the job, the kids, or whatever. It was just always following me like a backpack, and I couldn't take the backpack off. So I attempted to end my life and ended up in a psychiatric ward. And one of the conditions upon my release was I had to seek outpatient. And I've had to do this before, but I think there was a big difference being 35 at the time than like in my 20s, where I'm like, whatever. Like, I'll say I'm going to do it and then I won't. This time it was different, I think, more because of my age and that I had children and there was a lot of things at play. And so that's when I Googled, close to home, accepting new patients. Like, there was no pathway. Like, I wasn't really taking it serious, but I was kind of taking it serious. And the person that was able to fit me in, meeting all those criterias, happened to be my therapist, Robin, who changed my life indefinitely. She was the one that I worked with. She's the one that I still check in with every 6 months or so. She was the one that encouraged me to write my book. So
okay,
that was
we'll get to your book, okay? Just calm down.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm just being an asshole.
No, I literally, as I was saying it, I was like, this sounds like an infomercial plug right now. It really does.
You got a book, I get it.
We're going to edit it out. Like, we don't need to even, no. So that was kind of my journey. It was the 4th time. And I'm like, you know what? This is the 4th time. It's the 4th time. Something has to give here. So that were the events that led me to actually, I don't believe, if I'm being honest, that if that didn't happen when it happened, that I would be sitting here today not meeting criteria. I think I would have just keep going on and doing what worked for me, which didn't really work for me anyways, but like, I pretended that it did.
Right.
Yeah. Like most people, like, it works for me. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, like I said, people in treatment, like trying to control stuff. It's like, well, look where the control got you. Now you're in treatment or the hospital or the psych ward or whatever.
Right. So you were in treatment for 3 years? Is that
No, I was in treatment. It was just a month-long treatment.
Oh, month-long treatment. Okay. But it's been 3
yeah.
years? I thought maybe 3 is just in my head. I don't know.
It's been 7 years, actually.
Congratulations. That's, addiction in itself. I don't know what it was, but it's tough either way.
It was mostly alcohol and marijuana mixed with the odd mushroom trip.
A sprinkle of trip here or there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know too, I'm a suicide attempt survivor as well. And, that was about 10 years ago. And same thing. And I know you were talking there and I remember that thought process too. It's like, I'm so exhausted living this way. And it's like all or nothing thinking. So it's like, okay, I'm so tired of living this way. Either I got to end it by like taking my life or what? Well, something's got to give. And then somehow in that moment, I found help either through a nurse or a hospital or a therapist or whatever. And it's like, okay, if I'm this sick of living this way that I'm going to take my life, how about I just, surrender to the process and maybe take some advice and do some work.
Right. Imagine that, right?
And healing's, and it's hard. It's super hard. I mean, it's really fucking hard. It hurts more than hurting.
Oh,
healing.
Healing. I was like, there was points where I was like, I'm going to go back to this is harder than having it. As I kept saying that it's harder to get better than to just roll the dice and be like, because it wasn't always bad. Right. Like, and even in like other people's addictions, like there were some fun drinking times. Right. And there wasn't always the blackouts and things like that. And so like the process was way harder for me than having it. Now looking back, I can say, it was worth it because, like, if I continued to live the life I was going to live, I was going to have like 14 kids and STD. Because I struggle with the promiscuity a lot. That was because it's everybody's favorite, fun girl, promiscuous girl, and I needed the outside validation. So that was my go-to self-coping mechanism.
So how were you not? Because I know histrionic personality disorder is it's very sexual based. So was there? I guess there's probably a lot of crossover, between those personality disorders. So, interesting. Okay. Someone I talked to that was diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder. Again, I hate repeating myself because I say a lot of the same stuff to people, but, whatever.
It's the same stuff. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Someone new might hear it. But the point is that once you get in that spiral of either personality disorder or trauma or whatever, you actually then start creating your own trauma. Then you have to go to therapy for trauma that was created by the disorder that was created by trauma. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And some of it's shame, some of it's guilt, some of it's you witnessed insane things because you're in a trap house or whatever, or you're because you're so promiscuous, you get in super dangerous situations with men or abusers or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's that's the nature of the disease is it wants to take you down. Right.
And and it's this, like you said, creating sort of these things and not even just physically, mentally, someone with borderline personality. Well, in my experience, I need your validation, Bunny. I need it, but I won't believe you.
Do you call me Bunny?
Yeah. Bunny.
Oh, my name's Todd, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
I liked Bunny.
Oh, okay.
No, I see your name. I was just like, Bunny. It's such a cute little... Okay, Todd.
Yeah, I don't mind. No, Bunny's fine. I just wasn't sure if you knew my name.
No, I did. Absolutely.
Okay.
So I need your validation. Thanks, I need your validation, Todd. Dang it. Tell me I'm doing a good job. And then you look at me and you say, hey, I don't believe you. So needing something from you, but also not believing it. And then what that created was this, again, self-validation. But if you tell me I'm doing a shitty job, I'm like, you're fucking right. I'm doing a shitty job. And then that would create this self-loathing. Then that would lead to doing X, Y, Z and creating more drama about something that I wasn't going to believe anyways. And that I flipped it around in my head and I perceived it the way that I thought more fit me. And the creation, it's Alice in Wonderland's whole, right? And then there's this, the rabbit and the cat and the, centipede or the mushrooms. And you're just like, whoa, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing you mentioned earlier was some people, and maybe you did this early in recovery, when you do relapse, it's like, well, fuck it then. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to relapse hard. And to me, that's a form of self-harm in a way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, because you do know better, because you actually do then make that decision. Well, fuck it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it took a long time to balance, because for a long time I thought I can't have a reaction, because there are some moments in life, like if my husband says something stupid or my kids are doing something like that warrant a reaction. But for a long time, I didn't react at all, because I felt that if I did have any sort of reaction, it would mean I was regressing. So I was like, then threw it, got the other end, and I'm like internalizing all this shit, and I'm like, and it's festering. And it really was a tough time to have a balance. So what I just told myself is like, you know what? You're allowed to lose your shit, but you have to put a timer of 3 minutes, because my shit, when I lost it, it could be 3-4 hours. Like I could be just around the house berating and losing. So I gave myself a timer. That way I wasn't internalizing everything, but I could still say, you know what the fuck am I? But limiting myself. And that's what I did with my overspending, limiting myself. Like I'd leave all my cards at home and only take $10. And it was those kind of little tools that I had to do every single day, that I still do, to be perfectly honest. It's a lifelong disease, or not disease, but mental illness. Lifelong. It will never be easy for me.
Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is supported by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 20 years. If you live in Western Canada, especially the prairies, or spent any time here, you've probably fueled up or bought groceries at a co-op. You might even have a co-op number, or 2, or 3. You know if you know. But co-op is not just a gas bar or a grocery store. Although co-op is those things too, it's a different kind of business. Co-op members are owners, and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at co-op.crs.
Introducing the timely children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. The visually stunning book is told through the eyes of a boy whose father suffers from depression. He sees his dad get sad, rest, and even go to the hospital, all while comparing his father's depression to a physical ailment. Sometimes Daddy Cries is getting rave reviews from parents and mental health professionals alike. One critic has stated, "This is a timely and important book that will help countless fathers and sons broach the subject of depression." An Amazon customer commented, "An excellent book to open up a conversation with a young child about depression in a parent. No big words, just a book about feelings." Sometimes Daddy Cries author Todd Rennebaum has personal experiences with anxiety, depression, and addiction. Sometimes Daddy Cries is available in hardcover and paperback.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things you do day to day? Maybe not day to day, but every other day, or something that it's, consistently you have to do.
Waiting 15 minutes. Ugh.
Oh.
That's the worst.
On anything, like at a doctor's office or something?
No.
Just waiting?
No. Like if I'm having, because I still get emotional waves of happiness or hurt or sadness. And so I have to wait 15 minutes before doing something. Because normally it was very instant relief, instantaneous relief of what I would do. So before, my therapist would be like, wait 15 minutes before you send that text message. And I would wait 15 minutes and still send that 3-page text message. Like it didn't always work the 15 minutes, but the longer I did it, like after 15 minutes, like during the 15 minutes, I was like about to read you the Bill of Rights. I was practicing, right? The 15 minutes, what the heck I was going to tell you.
Right.
It gave me more time to like better my insults, right? Better my stuff.
Yeah.
And then I learned that, waiting 15 minutes, it really just lessened the intensity of what I was feeling. And then towards the end, like I either wouldn't send it at all or it would just be a simple fuck you. Like it wasn't, or waiting 15 minutes. I'm like, do I want to go in the car? And do I want to drive all the way to the mall? It's 20 minutes. And waiting was the hardest, but also the most life-changing for me. Sour Patch gummies was one of those weird ones. When I would have an anxiety or panic attack, I would suck on something sour because your brain can only process one fear, I think, at a time. And so then I was like, oh, the explosion in my mouth. And so silly things like that. Not looking for outside validation, not thinking that everybody thinks I'm awesome. When the clerk says, hey, have a good day, that doesn't mean he wants to marry me, right? He's just telling me to have a good day. Because I would take these little things, whether they were kind or trivial or whatever, and I would make them bigger in my head. Like, oh, it never dawned on me like that's his job, customer service. He says thank you and have a good day to everybody.
That dude is horny.
Right? He just wants it.
he's not even, there's no indiscretion. He's just everybody and anybody that walks by him. He's flirting with. Yeah. Huh. So how long ago? So no, 2017 you said. So it's been about 6 to 7 years, and the first 3 years were the hardest.
Oh yeah.
And you were already with your husband when you started getting treatment? I
was. So it's actually, I'm celebrating 15 years today. It's my anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yes, I was with him. I had a daughter from a previous relationship.
As one does.
As one does. And then we met and we got married in 2009. So he has been through it all of it.
And has he had to talk to someone, or have you gone as a couple to talk to a professional? Or
we went a couple of times together. He didn't. He's very simple. He's brilliant, very concrete personality like that's his thing. He's like, A plus B is C, and there's no other variables. So we went a couple of times just for him more to understand, because I think what made it really difficult for him is that he thought it was a him thing. Like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not supportive enough. I'm not hot enough because she's out doing all of these other things. And I think once he realized that it was a disorder, that it wasn't personal, that these are just, again, coping mechanisms, he was able to understand that. But in 2017, that was our breaking point. He said, I can love you, but I can't do this either. Like, we're either going to move past what we've been through, and we're going to leave it at the door, and we're not going to bring it up, and we're not going to do any of that shit, and you're going to go get better. Or I will support you in your recovery because you are the mother of our children, and I need you to be a good mother, but like, that's it. Like, we're not going to do this. So he was really, really great in the process. And I spent a long time trying to overcompensate to not pay back, but rewrite a wrong. Cause that man, bless his heart. Now, he wasn't perfect. He was a little pain in my ass, and there were things that I think that he could have done better. He would hang up. He knew I hate it when he would hang up on me. It would give me like panic. Like, if I'm chewing his ass or I'm like having a moment and he would hang up, I would get physically ill, and he would still do that. And I understand why. He's like, dude, we've been at this for 3 hours, but I'd be like, I don't care what you do. Put in earplugs, pretend you're listening to me, but just don't hang up on me. It's like, it sends me to the spiral. But yeah, so we've been together 15 years, and he's been a really great and big part of the process. I'm lucky. I know a lot of people don't stay because they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there is none. If you don't get treatment, people thinking that they can just wake up and be like, I'm not going to have a personality disorder, or I'm going to manage these things. No. Nope.
I'm going to take psychedelics and I'll be better.
I mean, I hear that does work. Like, I never tried it because I'm a control freak. Like, the idea of not being in control gives me anxiety. Like, it wouldn't work. I'd be too busy tripping out and being like, give me the thing that makes this go away. But I do hear some good things. I think about like ketamine or something like that.
Oh yeah. I think, there's very good reason to think that psychedelics do work as, treatment and medicine and stuff. But there's also a lot of people that just like take it upon themselves. Like, I'm just going to go do some mushrooms and trip out in the forest and I'll be, It's like, no, you should still have like therapy and do it, with treatment. You know what I mean?
Underneath it, like somebody supervised that's qualified to like,
Or it's like, my buddy's a shaman. I'm gonna go trip balls and I'll be good. It's like, nah. I mean, have a good time,
right?
But that's. I don't know.
That's not really gonna help. Well, and the funny thing is that I also thought that it wasn't, I mean, I kind of knew it was a me thing, but I'm not too sensitive. People are just not sensitive enough. I'm not dramatic. People just don't care as much as I do. So I was waiting for like everybody around me to change, right? That was the problem. If you would just be more intense, this would be fine. And it took me a long time to realize that not everybody processes pain or happiness the way that my brain does. And so I was never going to find that person. I mean, I'm sure I could have gone to like a group meeting and been like, anyone in here with PPD, like that wants to have a relationship? Let's try this. But I really did feel like it was other things and other people. And then I realized that like when I was able to control it, there were still some people that aggravated or exasperated my emotions. But then I had the choice of being around that person or not versus anybody.
Right. Right. But at that point in your treatment, you're well enough to recognize it and set boundaries with people or situations. And
yeah. Which was also hard because I don't like boundary. Like I have no boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Like if I were there where you are, I would be like, hi, and I'd give you this big hug, and maybe like you have a wife and she's like, who the heck is this girl? Like I was just I was over the top all the time and not in a negative way all the time, but it made people uncomfortable. I did not have a lot of female friends because of my personality. They always thought I was picking up on their boyfriends. Sometimes I was, not gonna lie, but most of the time I'm just a friendly person. And so, a lot of girls were like, you're like trying to steal my man. I'm like, no, I'm really not. And so I had a lot of guy friends. And then when you have a friend of a different sex, it's a lot easier to, cross the boundaries.
So at some point in your treatment, you thought, I should make this a book.
No, I didn't write a book.
Yes, you did.
We're not talking about it. I'm just kidding.
A magazine? No.
Actually, it's actually quite short. It's only 100 pages, so I guess it could be considered a magazine.
That's a pretty big magazine.
Well, it's funny
there's no
because
ads in it.
Yeah, there's no ads. Well, I mean, no, but yeah, it's a short book, and it was after I completed therapy that I went back, and part of my therapy process was to journal. I don't know if you've ever like just journaled your thoughts, emotions, feelings. No, not a journaling type.
I mean, I've been told to, and it's like I'll do it for like a day or two, and then I just forget.
Okay, that works. But that was part of my sort of homework, is that I was supposed to journaling what I was feeling at the time, my things that were going on through my head, the things that I were doing. And so after therapy, I went back and I had hundreds and hundreds of these journal entries. And a lot of them were repetitive because honestly, it was the same shit, different day, right? It was just this cycle. But I was looking at them and I was like, wow, these are pretty honest. And I know that if I'm going through something like this, probably somebody else is going through something like this too. But I didn't want it just to be a journal. I was like, who wants just to be a journal? So then I thought, what about my patient's notes alongside my journals of the same session? Disclaimer, not actual patient's notes. That's a huge violation of HIPAA. But I did get access to them and was able to take from them, but I didn't like just copy and paste them.
I see.
Yeah. And I also wanted it to sort of be a story and a tool, because in the patient's notes, it does state what I worked on. Waiting 15 minutes, doing the gummies, having friend zones where like you put people, not everyone's your best friend, right? You have friends that you'll do something for, and you'll have friends that you'll talk to once every 6 months. So I thought it would be really great to have both a story and tools that people with borderline personality could relate to and also maybe try. Because I mean, obviously, healthcare and mental health care is really hard. So sometimes people don't have the options to go to therapy. So they have to get the book. They have to get the workbook. They have to, do their own research, unfortunately, which is terrible because Google is like infinite of knowledge, but not always the right knowledge and things like that. So yeah, it wasn't until after where I was able to take a step back and look at what I'd been through that I decided, why not? No harm, no foul, and hopes. And I've received beautiful feedback. Mostly, and the part that was most important to me was how relatable it was. Like people would say, I thought I was the only one that had these, foul thoughts and did these foul things. And, so it's been a really interesting journey for sure.
So there's way more foul people out there than you thought. You're like, oh, thank God.
I know. Right? Literally. I was like, there was this part, because I do talk about also, when you are somebody that is promiscuous, there's always things that can occur. And so there's a lot of people have reached out and been like, oh, I felt very ashamed because I did that and I had to have an abortion or something like that. Right. I think I called my situation like in the book, a glue baby. Like that's how I referred it to. I'm like, I'm either going to keep the glue baby or I'm, and people are like, whoa. And it's like, that's how I that's how I thought about it at the time. Like, it wasn't this thing for me. It was the result of something that I knew I shouldn't have been doing, but like, what do I do with this? So I swear a lot. There's humor in it. It's sad, but funny. I'm sassy, I'm all the things that I wanted it to be. It is basically paper pen. There's no editing to it. There's no, like publisher saying, oh, you can't say glue baby. What? That's not okay. Yeah. So, it was very therapeutic for me.
Cool. So it's very, very candid, very vulnerable, very raw. It's like, that's exactly what you were thinking at that time. So why sugarcoat it or edit it or whatever?
Yeah, they're real. They're real sessions. Yeah, they are real journals from real sessions, real therapy sessions in real time. So, it'll say the book starts off with how I ended up in the hospital. So it's January 2017, and you just dive right in. Like, I don't, there is no gloves, no lube, nothing. Like, it dives right in. And that can be a lot for some people. I've had some people that were like, this is great. Like when I would try to get it out, I think more to the masses as far as like specific groups and stuff for BPD, they were like, girl, we can't, no. The decision makers were like, it's too much. The people that struggled with borderline personality was like, this is exactly what I needed. So it's a double-edged sword always.
Yeah. You can't please everyone. So what's it called?
It's called Pay Attention to Me.
I am. What's your book called?
Pay Attention to Me.
Hi-oh. I could have kept that going, but I decided
right? I was like, what? Pete and repeat. No. I thought it was a fitting title because people often describe borderline personalities as attention seekers. And maybe, I don't know if that's true or not. We do fear abandonment. So obviously if we don't want you to leave us, there's like that aspect to it. And then also, I think my therapist said 487 times, pay attention to me. So because it's a dual perspective, it's my journals and then the patient's notes. I was like, well, that makes the most sense. Pay attention to me because it worked both ways. And then my husband designed the cover. It's a super simple cover.
Like your husband.
Like,
you called him simple.
He is simple. I don't even know.
That sounds negative to me. You're so simple. You idiot.
No, he's fascinatingly simple. Lucky for me, he doesn't watch things like this, so he won't be like, wow. Thanks, babe.
I'm complex, you
right?
son of
No, he really, really isn't. Because I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be super. I'm like, it needs to come out of a brick wall, and I'm punching through the wall because I'm under. And he's like,
Kool-Aid
no.
Man.
He's like, no. So it really is a simple cover. It's just a bunch of words that people tend to describe borderline personality on there. And then just the title, Pay Attention to Me. Simple, easy, 100 pages. And it's funny because I wrote it in the way that I thought someone struggling with, borderline or even ADD, because like there are core mental health issues that often are seen. And I'm the type of person, like, I don't want a bunch of backstory. I want to know what the fuck happened. I want to know what happened and how it ended and all this stuff in between. And so I kind of wrote it in that way where it was easy enough to follow super quick. Like, I didn't put all the general entries, or there would have been, 600 of, the time I went down the street and, almost lit the garbage can on fire or whatever. Like, there would have been like 600 pages of that. So it's really super easy to get through. I think everyone said it maybe takes an hour for the whole book.
Really?
Yeah, just because of the way that it's laid out. My background is in psychology. The irony of having a psychology major and not being able to control or understand my mental illness was also one of these ugh. And ironically, I have a master's in dispute resolution, but I create all the dispute anyone could ever need in their lifetime.
Wow. That's why you have the master's in it. Right. You created the course.
It was based on my life, really. Yeah. So again, I live a a lot of people didn't know and still don't know. And, when you become like this huge podcast extraordinaire and, they're going to be like, what? Never knew. A lot of people just still didn't know because I was able to live sporadically functioning life and go to school and get my degree and blah, blah, blah. And I was having a crazy life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I live in a small town, and when people from my job and stuff found out I was like in the hospital after a suicide attempt, it was like literally blew their minds.
Right.
What the fuck? Like, you're always the happy-go-lucky, pew pew, telling jokes and stuff guy. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, no, life sucks for me too.
Right? It's just, you never know. You never know who you meet, what someone's struggling with. People can wear masks often. It's just not Halloween, folks. We can wear masks anytime. Have
you come across much stigma towards cluster Bs, or, more specifically borderline?
I believe, I don't think I've ever seen a movie where the character has borderline and is portrayed in any sort of light. I don't know if you've ever seen Fatal Attraction. I
haven't, actually.
Oh,
I know the movie, though. Yeah. Because of the famous leg crossing scene. It's like, that was you?
That was me.
You sure?
So Girl Interrupted. That was another one that came out. Angelina Jolie was in it, and Winona Ryder and stuff. So the biggest problem with borderline personality disorder specifically is that we tend to, in movies or in readings or just when talking about it, highlight the negative, right? Oh my gosh, she tried to commit suicide. She tried to do this. She lit my house on fire. She called me 670,000 times. All of these sort of erratic behaviors. And nobody highlights, or at least not very often. There is this beauty to BPD that I miss. I miss being able to, people could open up to me easily. I was super empathetic, overly empathetic, but I was able to do all of these things and feel all these things and give so much love and so much attention. My husband told me I've never felt love like it from anybody, that the way that I feel loved from you. But the pendulum swung the other way. Like, I also fucking hated you like so much. So I miss those aspects, like celebrating over the tiniest successes or laughing really loud at the stupidest jokes. Because there is so much beauty to it, but it's gone unregulated. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. It never overcompensates for how bad it can get to the people around you, to yourself. And mostly to yourself. Because I would have these emotional waves and then I'd look around me like my husband's watching TV, my kids are playing, and I'm the only one like having to recover. I'm like looking around going like, everybody is going to sleep just fine at night. You are the one that has to not sleep and deal with this and process it. But borderline personality, I think if people saw or heard about how lovely the lovely is, it wouldn't be so crazy bitch or crazy situation or crazy guy or whatever. So a lot of stigma surrounding borderline personality, less than before. but still very much. And again, it's just highlighting the wrong things. And I guess you could, I mean, when you highlight addiction, you don't highlight the time where you like had a good time and it was someone's birthday and you did karaoke. No, people tend to highlight like you're blacked out in an alley somewhere, right? Let's get the message across. And I think that's the worst part about it is just, it's super one-sided.
That time again for that Some Bunny special, a segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank, brought to you by Co-op. So who do you want to give a shout out to? You mentioned your husband, but is there anyone else that kind of has stuck with you through your worst times?
This just took a turn for the depression. Thanks. No, like,
no, it's a moment of gratitude.
Yes,
who
absolutely.
Do you want to give?
Honestly, it would be my therapist. It would be my therapist, Robin. And the reason why is because when I first started out with her, I had insurance that it's called poor people insurance here in the United States. And it was about a year and a half through the process that she decided she was going to open her own practice. And unfortunately, she wasn't going to be accepting that type of insurance because it's a struggle to, and I thought she was like severing ties with me, which sent me completely into another spiral. She ended up working with me for
abandonment issues.
Yeah. I mean, it was rough. I remember that session completely and how I just couldn't, I could see her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear anything. It was this really, but she ended up working with me for another year and a half, and just had me pay the copay of $20. She could have been making $200 or, whatever psychologists make an hour. And she was just like,
she's eating lunch and going to the bathroom while
right. Yeah. So, cause I know how much my insurance covered at the time. So for her to continue to work with me and just charge me $20, she saved my life, and not from killing myself. She's literally saved my everyday life.
Right. Your quality of life.
My quality.
And everyone around you, quality of life, probably.
And that's one thing I would say to anyone that is in the field that refuses, because there's a lot of people that refuse to work with borderline personality disorders. It's a lot to do. That you are not only affecting the patient, you are affecting anyone that patient has ever met or will meet in the future. Like, you are the heart of that process.
So no pressure.
Get your shit together.
No pressure, psychologists.
Right? That's actually a hybrid, and I didn't think of it. Thanks. Thank you.
You got to save the world, psychologists. So for $20 an hour.
Right? Only for free. Dang it. Pro bono, everything.
Oh, God. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I've had so much fun. I love these types of just two people chatting. I hate formal interviews. I hate, what is this and what is that? And I just like a chat.
I've been called a lot of things. Formal isn't one of them.
Well, and that is a very good thing. It makes it, to me, it humanizes the process, right? We're sitting here, we're talking about real issues with a couple of, F-bombs and laughing about it, and it humanizes it. And it's important. And that's why your work is so important, because it humanizes this incredible mental health thing.
Thank you so much for that, Kelly. If you would like to purchase Kelly's book, Pay Attention to Me, you can just find that on Amazon. And that'd be great if you bought that book. So go do that. I also forgot to thank, I haven't done any yet because I'm recording this before it, but by the time this comes out, I'd have done it. So I want to thank Joe at Queen's University here in Canada. On Friday, I'll be doing a talk for one of his classes at Queen's University, so that's really cool. And if you would like to have me speak at you or an event or anything like that, please reach out to me at bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com. I can do virtually, I can be in person, whatever. And let's get something going. Please stay tuned. There's lots of great guests and lots of great episodes coming up, and more cool stuff happening all the time. So until then, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.